It's no secret many of us have thought of our retirement, but what about your finances when it comes to your health? What happens when you get sick? Will you have enough money to cover all of those expenses? Here with ways to plan for healthcare costs in retirement is today's Your Dime sponsor, Rooted Wealth Advisors. Duke Smith, Chief Retirement Strategist, is back with us. So let's talk a little bit about why it's important to incorporate our health when it comes to planning for retirement.
Well, Heather, the unfortunate thing is that's probably going to be our biggest expense when it comes to our retirement. Most people think, they'd hope it would be spoiling the grandkids or traveling to all these bucket list trips or any number of different things that people dream about when they think about their retirement. But the sad truth is, healthcare is probably going to be where the biggest portion of their savings goes to in retirement.
People are living longer, so that's also something you need to keep in account.
Yeah, so healthcare has continued to improve over these years, and we actually, when we think about how long people are living these days, the average male life expectancy goes all the way out to 83, and female is actually just over the age of 85, and this has continued to go up year after year. So we have to plan for health care into a much older age than what maybe our parents or grandparents did.
And that also leads to thinking about inflation, because those prices of health care may go up just a little bit.
Yeah, so when we think about costs for health care, if we take an average 65-year-old couple, they're going to need, on average, $285,000 worth of assets to just cover health care throughout their retirement. Now that throws into things like Medicare premiums and other expenses, but that number is climbing very rapidly when we compare it to things like just regular inflation and cost of living to our everyday lives. Healthcare is climbing at a much more rapid pace than our everyday expenses are.
We can also talk about prevention, though.
Yeah, so one way to prevent for it, like anything, is to plan. By having that plan in place, we can start to prevent against some of these by having insurances in play, making sure that we do study our policies and know what we've got and what's covered and what isn't covered when it comes to things like Medicare. And you can work with somebody like a Medicare financial advisor, also thinking about things like long-term care and how we're going to cover that potential expense, because that's another obstacle that can be in our way when it comes to health care.
Yeah, I like it where it says, take charge of your health. You be in charge of it.
Yeah, and obviously the healthier lifestyle we can live maybe prevents against some of those. Obviously, we can't always protect against the unknown, but by taking better care of ourselves, we can maybe prevent some of those big expenses. But really one of them is long-term care, like we mentioned earlier, because 70% of people that make it to age 65 are going to need long-term care at some point, and that's something that is also very, very costly when we think about that.
And having a dad who needed long-term care and the importance of the insurance side of that, it is so important to plan for that, because you never know what might happen or when you might actually need it. Talking about those statistics once again, you mentioned the 70% chance of needing long-term care. Women seem to need it just a little bit longer than men.
Yeah, so on average, women are going to need it just about a year longer than men. But depending on which study we look at, it's going to be somewhere between 2 all the way up to 4 years on average that somebody's going to need long-term care. And when we think about the cost of that, that can eat through somebody's retirement savings very, very quickly.
Yeah, and that's scary. That's a scary thought to think about, especially if you're not prepared. You've got some prevention tips and a plan in place there with your guide.
Yeah, so we've got a guide for everybody out there watching today that they can go download directly. Talks about some healthcare planning tips and ways to prevent against these, whether it's long-term care, planning for Medicare and health insurance in retirement. They can go ahead and download that. We'll get them that website.
Yeah, and there's a look at the website where you can get this guide, healthyretirementguide.com. There's also a phone number where you can connect with Duke and his team there at the Rooted Wealth Advisors. And definitely a great little brochure there for people to learn more, and they can talk to you. And it's nice to have someone who knows what they're talking about break all this stuff down, because it can get kind of tricky.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about. This is a good resource as a starting point to go with, but then from there we got to start to dive into specifics a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to think about needing to have long-term care, but Definitely something you should be prepared for. If you need any more information about this and want to learn more and get your hands on that guide, we'll connect you at CILiving.tv.